Expand so I can see all your beautiful faces. Okay. Um, here we go. All right, everybody's got the screen? Good to go? Okay, cool. So anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Matt Erdman. I've been in real estate for 20 years. Done a whole lot of different things within that space. I've been an agent and owner, a team leader. I've been an investor since my very late teens, early 20s. I've been a MAPS coach or regional director, all of those things. Most importantly, a husband and a father, founder of Ari Profit, and the host that you guys have to put up with once a week for this Wealthy Agent webinar. That is who I am. This is who I am not. So I'm not a CPA. I'm not a tax attorney. I'm not a financial advisor. Unfortunately, we live in a very litigious world, so I have to put these disclaimers in all the time. All of the information that we provide is for information purposes only. Any attempt to implement it should be done with the guidance of a professional. If you are prospecting, please do it in a TCPA compliant way. And always remember, the goal here is to listen, learn, and then verify. So the end of last year, we started out with a little bit of engagement instead of diving into contact with the Tell Me Something Good, which I kind of fell off of and I want to get back to because it gives us a little more of an opportunity to kind of build community with each other, get to know each other, celebrate together. So I'm going to ask a couple of people, jump off mute, tell me something good. What do you have going on in your world, personally, professionally, that we can celebrate together?
I have 2 listing appointments this week.
There you go. Well done, girl.
Thank you. Thank you.
That is awesome. Congratulations. 2 listing appointments in 1 week. What else we got? Which, by the way, weren't we talking yesterday? What was your appointment goal for listings per month?
Per month?
Well, per week. Per week was 2.
Per week. Yeah. So
well
yay.
Done. Well done, man. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What else we got? Oh, by the way, let's add this. When you share something good, just tell us who you are. And if you were to refer business, where's the area that you work?
So my name is Lisa Antrim, and I'm in Southbury, Connecticut, out of the West Hartford office, and I go all over Connecticut.
Awesome. Perfect. All right. Who else has something good? Don't be shy. It gets weird.
I'll share. My name is Chanel Goldson. I cover all of Connecticut. I think the highlight of my week, I had a lot of wins, but it was finding housing for someone fleeing domestic violence. So I think that was really, really good because it was all about impact.
I love that so much, and thank you so much for sharing. Right? It is so easy for us to get caught up in the grind that real estate can be at times and forget the impact that we can actually have and the ripple effect in people's lives. So that is as good an example as I could ever think of. So thank you for doing that, Chanel, and thank you for sharing. That's amazing. Give me one more.
Okay, I have personal and business. Personal, of course, my new granddaughter coming.
I had a feeling
And
that
my
would be
amazing grandson and daughter and son-in-law. And in business, I have a listing coming on in a couple of weeks. You know, a little condo in Waterbury, and I too do all of Connecticut out of the West Hartford office. Thank you.
Just because I do know we have a good amount of people here from Connecticut, what can you tell us quickly, super quickly, about the listing in case somebody has a buyer that might be looking for a property?
Sure. It's a condo in Oronoque Woods, 2-bedroom, 1,200 square feet, full basement, not finished, central AC, and she's done all kinds of updates.
There you go.
Flooring, paint, ceiling, got rid of the popcorn ceiling. Yeah, it's all good.
Perfect. So if you got a condo buyer for that area, you know who to call when this webinar is over. Awesome. All right, cool. Let's dive in. So today we're going to lean into the 3 money models, and we're gonna do this in 3 sessions, and we're going to focus today on the first. So the goal today is to introduce some conversations, some concepts, and some models to really help us start thinking and operating like a business owner, rather like business owners rather than salespeople. Right? That's kind of one of my pet peeves in the industry. I think for too long, and it has changed significantly in the last probably 10, maybe 15 years. But largely, historically, training tools, education, it was all geared around sales, right? And really treated us like salespeople, even though the reality is we're all business owners. Um, but that's a mind shift, right? Being a salesperson is a very different thing than being a business owner. It's a different way of thinking, it's a different way of acting. So my goal today is to, again, hopefully introduce some ways of thinking, some conversations that can help us continue to move towards thinking and functioning like a business person. So number one, the three pillars. You have probably, if you've joined my webinars over time, heard me reference maybe more than once, kind of the three pillars of wealth building, which are really the three money models, which is how do we earn it? How do we save it? How do we invest it? Right? Human nature, we love to make things far more complicated than they actually are. Right? I personally think, right? And we all do it. I do it. We all do it. I personally think that's kind of our like get out of jail free card. Like if it was that simple, we'd just be doing it. When the reality is most solutions are actually that simple. The challenge is that that doesn't necessarily mean they're easy, but they are simple, right? We like to overcomplicate things because if the answers were simple, we'd be implementing the answers. Unfortunately, that's not necessarily accurate. But at the end of the day, if we want to build wealth, those three pillars, those three money models really are how do we learn how to earn it, save it, and invest it, right? If we only have two out of those three or one out of those three, then the model falls apart. So today we're going to lean into earning and we're not going to talk about profit and loss. Like we're not diving in at that level. We're going to talk more about how we should be thinking and acting. But number one, as I just said, if you don't know how to earn income, you can't ever save money. And if you don't ever save money, you never have the money to invest, right? It's dominoes. So number one, let's talk about what income is. Again, I'm going to apologize in advance for folks who come on a lot and or have had, I don't want to say the displeasure, but have been stuck listening to me more than once in their career. I tend to say the same thing over and over again, often around a lot of things. And the reason is the right answers don't change, right? I've often shared with people when I first got into a place within the organization that I got to be in small rooms with Gary Keller. And I probably shouldn't say this knowing that I'm being recorded, but I realized Gary repeats himself a lot. Right. And for those of us who know the DISC profile, I'm a high D. So repeating the same information over and over can get very annoying to me. But then I realized, right, like I had to slow down my own like natural behavior, ego, whatever that was, and go, all right, Gary's one of the smartest people I've ever come across in my life. Why does he repeat himself? I'm pretty sure he hasn't forgotten that he already said it. And what I realized is he's saying the same thing because it's still the answer. Right? As a leader, someone who teaches, trains, coaches, consults, things like that, oftentimes we're compelled, like we have to bring a new idea to the table all the time. And if we give into that, the reality is we could be bringing new information that it's not the right answer. We're just trying to bring a different flavor to seem or sound more exciting, right? But the reality is most of what is the biggest truths, I guess, in our world and in our business, right? They're timeless, right? They are things that remain true over time. So that's my long apology for the fact that you've probably heard me talk about this piece before. So number one, we got to change our mindset around what income is, right? If I'm a salesperson, I sell a thing, I earn a commission, and that is my income. If I'm a business owner, that is not my income, right? That is my GCI, my gross commission income, right? Which in the business world, we would call revenue. So we go from revenue to, well, what would actually be, what should we consider the real true earnings of our business? Somebody just unmute and tell me. You can kind of cheat, it's on the slide.
It's what we pay ourselves from the business.
It is, yeah. It is definitely not GCI. You can make an argument that it's net profit, but I would make the argument that still leaves out a little bit of business intellect. It's really what you pay yourself out of the business, right? Do most businesses earn income, pay their expenses, and then take 100% of the net profit and distribute it? Yeah, no, right? A certain amount of the money stays in the business to be able to build up reserves, to be able to reinvest, all of those things, right? The people who run that company or own that company take usually some set amount of income plus some kind of bonus structure or owner draw based on a schedule and based on performance. So we definitely shouldn't be thinking of GCI as our income. We love to do it, right? Everybody does it. We get our 1099 and we're like, oh my gosh, I made $400,000 this year. They didn't. They didn't. Right? I remember back when I was flipping houses, somebody asked me one day, how many houses did you flip last year? I answered the question. And then they said, what's your average profit per property? And I answered the question and they went, oh my gosh, so you made X amount of money last year? And I was like, no. Like, you don't think I had any expenses to flip that many houses? Like, I've got marketing expenses, I've got staff, I've got insurance, I've got all sorts of things. That is the money that was generated. That is the revenue. That is not the profit. So if we don't get out of that mindset that GCI is our income, like we can't even really move on to being able to have real true business conversation. So number one, GCI is not our income. That is not what we earn. You could argue it's net profit. I would even push it a little bit further down the road and say it's not net profit. It's what you choose to pay yourself out of the business. That is your income. That is what you earned. Net profit is what the business earned. Okay. So it should really look something like this, right? We have our commission, our sales times our commission rate equals our GCI minus our cost of sale. Cost of sale is generally our split with our brokerage, a team, if we're on a team, referral fees, things of that nature. That gets us down to our net income. Then we pay our expenses. What's left is our net profit. Then it's what do we pay ourselves out of the business? That's our real income in a business that's operating like a business. So let's talk about, these are what I believe are the 4 key things to being able to master earning income. And when I say master earning income, what I really mean is being able to decide how much money you intend to generate, how much of it you intend to keep, and then being able to actually go out and cause that to happen. Right? Like I am making a decision that I, in whatever business it is, am going to go out and create this much income over this period of time. And I'm going to do it in such a manner where I get to keep X amount of it. And I am able and capable to go and do that. And here's the thing that's fun. Largely, if you learn to do that in one business, you can do it in almost any business, right? When I was probably in my 30s, I was at the point where I was running the market center, starting to build the flip business. I had a conversation with somebody who's very famous within KW. I kind of tripped, fell, and was able to go to dinner with them. It was really because he needed a ride, right? It wasn't because I was on some master list of high priority people. He needed a ride. But the upside was I had a car, he needed a ride. So I got to sit and have dinner with somebody who had a lot more experience than I did. And when I asked him the question, I said, if you could talk to your 30-year-old self, I know you own a bunch of different businesses. I'm that guy too. I know you have a family. I'm that guy too. So I'm kind of your 30-year-old self. What advice would you give? And his answer was read the MREA. Every answer for every business you're building is in the MREA. They all apply to all things. Again, we want to complicate things. There's been times where I've been wrestling with a business problem. And what's really been funny is when I'm wrestling with a business problem and I say it to my wife, and my wife goes, literally, this has happened. Isn't there like a lead generation model in the MREA? Isn't that like the same thing? Wouldn't you just do the same thing? And I'm like, huh, yeah, you're right. It is the same thing. I guess that is the answer, right? So again, don't overcomplicate things. But I believe it's committing to mastery. It's knowing what your key assets and your key activities are. It's narrowing your focus, and it's embracing redundancy. And we're going to dive into all of those and what those actually mean. So number one, committing to mastery. I believe if you want to earn a lot of income, you have to get really good at what you do, period. Like if you don't think you're one of the best realtors out there, you're going to have a hard time earning the amount of money that you would choose to earn. There is no reason that everybody on this call shouldn't have a genuine belief that they're the best realtor out there, right? And if you don't, you should ask yourself why, What gap exists that I don't believe that I'm the best realtor out there? And what would I have to do to fill that gap? And by the way, it's not how many transactions you do, right? I've met amazing agents who do this many transactions, and I've met agents that I would never refer to a friend or family member in my life who do this many, right? It can go either direction. It's not necessarily about how much you do, it's how well you do it, right? So I believe, I don't care what you are, plumber, electrician, doctor, realtor, it's how much time, energy, and effort do you put into mastering your craft, right? So you've got to commit to mastery. You've got to show up in a way that you take a real look at yourself. What are your strengths? Where do you have gaps? How do I lean into my strengths? How do I fill my gaps so that I can build my skills and get to the place where I go out there and genuinely believe I'm the best person anybody could work with to buy, sell, or invest in real estate? Mastery, in my mind, in this conversation falls into two buckets. One is learning to lead yourself. End of the day, that is our biggest challenge, right? If we can't lead ourselves, we can have all the best ideas on the planet, but execution becomes a real problem, right? I often say that the least stressful time of my life was when I was overseas with the military in a combat zone. Every time I say that, I have to preface that with I never shot at anybody and nobody ever shot at me. So my experience was very different than what some other people experienced. I think it's important to say that when I say that it was the least stressful time of my life. I got to ask you the question though, what do you think made it the least stressful time in my life? If you had to guess, somebody guess.
You didn't have to think about what you had to do every day. You already knew.
100%. Yep. I didn't have to think about what I was doing because I actually didn't have a lot of choices. I was told what to do all day, every day, exactly how to do it, when to do it, where to do it, who to do it with, right? I didn't have a lot of choices. So there wasn't a whole lot of stress. But what I learned from that process is so much of our stress comes from the argument we have about everything we intend to do in our head. Right? It starts when the alarm goes off and we start arguing with ourselves about, I know I said 5, but 5:15 is good, 5:30 is good. You realize it's actually not that hard to get out of bed when you're supposed to, when you have no choice. You just get up, right? The argument has no space. There's no space for that argument. Someone's going to kick you and drag you out of your bunk by your feet if you don't get up. So you just do because that's an unpleasant way to wake up. So you just get up. And all of a sudden, that argument never happened. When it's time to go to the gym, you go to the gym. Why? Because that's what you're supposed to do at that time. There's no conversation, there's no argument, right? The reality is, once I leave that environment, well, now I have to get myself to do all those things. I have to get myself to get out of bed and know that there's nobody there who's going to kick me or drag me out by my feet, right? That is self-leadership. Self-leadership is just keeping promises to yourself. That's all self-leadership is, right? I think that fits into a couple of buckets. And by the way, if you have the worksheet, you can do it while we're talking. You can do it afterwards. But I just kind of laid out some of the bullets of the things that we're talking about to give you the opportunity to sort of do a self-evaluation on yourself around each one of these aspects. And by the way, when you do it, nobody's looking over your shoulder. So be honest with yourself, because to lie to yourself would be weird, right? Doesn't make any sense. But when it comes to self-leadership, I think of 3 buckets. One is your mindset, right? What am I thinking, right? Keeping promises to ourselves is much more difficult when we're not in a good headspace, right? So we got to manage our mindset. Number 2 is our behaviors, our disciplines, and our habits. And I think about those as 3 separate buckets. In my mind, they are not synonyms. Behaviors, in my mind, is just the things I do, that I might be somewhat unaware of, right? It's kind of what I do when I'm not necessarily thinking or being super purposeful about what I'm doing, right? That's kind of my behaviors. You have your disciplines. In my mind, discipline is the energy that it takes to do a thing, before that thing becomes a habit. Right? So if you think about people that you look at and from the outside looking in, number one, comparing your insides to somebody else's outsides, bold law, terrible idea, right? You want to muck up your mindset, start comparing everything you know about yourself to only what you know about somebody else. That's not an equal fight. You only see the outside part of it, right? But when you see somebody that from the outside looking in, somebody says, wow, they're really disciplined. They're usually not really disciplined in a lot of areas. They're able to implement discipline in a specific area long enough for that thing to become a habit. And then once it's a habit, it doesn't actually require discipline anymore. It's a habit, right? So to me, discipline is not a thing we do forever. Discipline is the energy that it takes to do a thing long enough for it to become a habit, right? Then we don't need the discipline anymore because it's a habit. And then we can look at any other gap that we have in our life and go, okay, I'm going to take that discipline and I'm going to apply it to that thing. So it's mindset, it's your behaviors, it's your disciplines, it's your habits, and then it's your time, right? Our time is a completely, it is a non-renewable resource. For better or worse, the hour that we're spending together today, you will never get back. Now let's watch the Zoom drop. Participation. Everyone's leaving. You're never going to get it back. This is it. This is your one hour. This is the only hour that you will ever have at 11:25 on February. I think it's the 3rd, 2026. When the moment's over, it'll never come back. So we got to honor it that way, right? We think about losing money. Losing money is a terrible thing, but we can earn money back. We can lose money, learn a lesson in the process, and then earn that money and then some back. But we don't earn our time back. And we got to value our time as one of the most valuable assets and resources that we really have. So again, it's mindset, it's your behavior, disciplines, habits, and your time. The tools for those things, right? Because we need systems, processes, and tools to help us implement those things. That is really your 411, your GPS, and your calendar. Those are the 3 tools, right? There's a couple people on this call that I have a regular scheduled coaching relationship with, right? We'll talk about the things that we are planning to do, the things we intended to do, right? And we're always going to look at a calendar. Does your calendar actually support that thing, right? If we want to do X, right? Gary Keller will say it, right? Tell me what's important to you, or show me your calendar. This is what Gary always says. Show me your calendar. I'll tell you what's important to you, and I'll tell you how much money you make. And if you think about it, it's probably not that hard, right? If you took a bunch of calendars from people in our business, you could look at it and go, you might tell me a bunch of stuff is important to you, but I can tell you from your calendar what is, what isn't, and probably make a pretty good guess as to what you're earning based on what's on the calendar, right? So then we move to our job, right? Which is how I always looked at it when I was actively producing as a full-time agent. I always looked at it like I had a job in a business. The job was everything I had to go do every day. The business was all the things I had to take care of so that I could do that really well, so that I could grow, so that it would be profitable. That was the business. But I looked at it like I have a job inside of a business that I own, right? My job was the tasks that I had to do every day, over and over. That was my job. The rest was the business that I owned that I had to work on, right? So working in was my job. Working on was my business, right? There could be more, but I tried to boil it down and keep it simple. Within our job, right? We need to master our market, right? We should be, this goes back to being the best realtor out there, the best real estate agent out there. We need to master our market. We need to know and understand our market, right? Especially given that there's so much information out there. Our clients know more than they've ever known before about real estate. So if your clients know more than you do about real estate, that is going to affect the level of respect they have for our profession. And it's definitely going to affect the income you're able to generate, right? So know your market. Your relationships, right? What are you doing to master your relationships? Because this is a relationship business. Mastering presentations. Like it or not, even I say it sometimes, I'm not in sales. I've said it my whole career. I'm not really in sales. Can't sell someone a house, right? There is a level of sales to what we do, though. When you go on a listing appointment, you are selling yourself, your value, and your services. When you do a buyer consult, you are selling yourself, your value, and your services, right? The question you always want to ask yourself is if you got a text message right now to go on a buyer consult or a listing appointment with a person you've never met, can you jump up and run out the door and know that you're going to nail it? Right? If the answer is no, I've got a gap that I should be working on, right? I need to button up my presentation skills because I should be able to get a ping at any moment and say, okay, I got to be there in an hour. Not that this is how it typically happens, but you should be that prepared because you've practiced, right? It goes back to athletes, right? When we see the athletes playing on the field, we're looking at a lifetime of practice showing up on game day. Imagine if they practiced on game day, like they just didn't play until there was a game, right? When you say things like that, I always see people smile, chuckle, right? Because like, that's ridiculous. No, it is. It is ridiculous. It would be ridiculous to practice on game day. And so if we're professionals, I would argue it's ridiculous to practice in front of a real buyer or a free seller or a real seller. Now, you might be learning and tweaking in that process, right? But you should have practiced already. You should go in knowing this is how I do this thing, right? So it's our market, our relationships, our presentations, our communication. One of the number one places where our value falls down is communication, right? And that affects our ability to earn, right? The better we do with a client, the better the experience we give and the relationship that we create, right? That working with that client is about the experience, the relationship, and the outcome. And we can, when we provide an outstanding experience, we build a genuine relationship and we provide a positive outcome, we should be creating a raving fan, right? A raving fan who, unless they're that girl in Stranger Things who just appeared from a weird science factory somewhere and has no family, they probably do. They probably have siblings and relatives and friends, many of whom will buy real estate someday, right? You want to make them that raving fan. There is nothing better than having a client who yells at people who buy or sell real estate with someone other than you. It's like the funnest thing ever, right? If you ever get that call from someone and they're like, you don't know me, but I live next door to so-and-so, and she literally yells at us all the time in the neighborhood. Like those are the kinds of calls you want to create. But that comes through mastering all of this, including the communication, right? And then your processes, right? There's such a human element to what we do, and every transaction is a little different, and every client is a little different. What that can lead to is everybody having a different experience, which means the experience becomes inconsistent throughout a transaction or from client to client. The outcome becomes inconsistent, and the level of relationship that we build in the process becomes inconsistent, right? It is our processes that help us repeat what is good and eliminate what is bad, right? So we've always got to be thinking about the things we're doing and just how do I systematize this? How do I turn it into a process? What was good about what happened, and how do I make sure the good happens again? What was bad about what happened, or less than great? Well, how do I make that great or eliminate that experience altogether, right? That's how we create processes and systems, right? End of the day, it's kind of like we start out like, well, I think this is the best way to do it. And then we walk around and bump our head. And as we bump our head, we go, well, I didn't like that. So let me figure out how not to do that again. Well, this was a great experience. How do I make sure this continues to happen? So it's processes and systems. All right. So if we look at our business and it's about mastering the market, mastering relationships, presentations, communication, and processes. Our key assets and key activities. So all things do not carry the same amount of value, period, and end of story. One of the number one ways where we lose control of our most valuable asset, arguably, or I should say our least renewable asset, which is time, is we treat all things like they have equal value, right? And if you ever meet a person who you're like, I don't understand how that person gets it all done in 24 hours, they probably understand what is the best use, what is not the best use, and they just don't do the not best use stuff, right? They don't have any more time than we do. It has to mean they somehow use the time better, right? And it's very rarely because they're doing more. It's usually because they're doing more of the right stuff and less of everything else, right? That's kind of the misnomer. You even hear it when people talk about building teams or getting to a certain level of production. They'll be like, I don't ever want to do that level of production. Like, I'd lose my mind. I mean, that assumes that you have no processes, you have no systems, you have no help, you have no, so you're just imagining it doing 100 transactions like you do 25. Yeah, that would be a nightmare. But that's not how you do 100 transactions, right? It's about a different use of time and resources that allows you to do that. So our key assets, in my mind, are time, capital, and relationships. I think in life and in business, right? Those are three really important assets. From a production standpoint, it's leads, listings, and leverage, right? Our key activities, right? We know them. Lead generation, lead nurture, listing appointments, buyer appointments, showing houses, open houses, writing offers, negotiating offers, and home inspections. I mean, those are the items. It's lead gen, lead nurture, listing appointments, buyer consultations, showing houses, open houses, writing offers, negotiating offers, and home inspections. Can we all agree if we did just those things for 8 hours a day? I'm not saying it's actually possible. I'm just saying if you did, could we all agree you would probably produce the most amount of production you possibly could produce? Is that a fair statement? Like, give me a hand, a thumbs up, since everybody's quiet today. Yeah, it would be. Yeah. So our key assets, we have to learn to protect our time because it's not a renewable asset. Remember that capital is oxygen for our business and our wealth plan. So we need to protect it and we need to grow it. Right? Without that oxygen, our business starves, our wealth plan starves. Unfortunately, our dreams can starve. Right? We need capital to feed our life, our business, our wealth plan, our dreams, and relationships. We are in a relationship business. We earn the relationship with communication and professionalism. The day I meet you, the only way I know I want to work with you is because of the level of professionalism that you show and the manner in which you communicate that professionalism to me. So it's communication and professionalism is what gets us the relationship. Then we deepen the relationship through trust as we do business together. And we nurture the relationship after and during the transaction through professionalism, trust, and value. Right? So when you think about how my processes with a client are, how I interact with a client, how do I interact with a client after the transaction, think about those three things: professionalism, communication, trust, and value. Right? A great class, if you want to dive deeper into that conversation, is Value Squared. I would argue when Value Squared came out, I made the statement multiple times, it's probably one of the best courses KW has put out in years. Right? And too often we want to go to a magic bullet class that is like, here's this new magic thing that you can do that will immediately blow up your business. Right? That's rarely the most valuable thing that you can go to, because whatever that is, even if it's effective, it's probably a timeless or a timely strategy, right? Something that has a short shelf life. It's going to pop up and it's going to disappear. Value Squared is all about how you build real true value, real true trust, real relationships, real service, right? So it's an amazing class. If you want to master this, go to Value Squared, right? And then implement what you learn. Leads, listings, and leverage, right? This is straight out of the MREA. right? We know if we don't have leads, we don't have anybody to build relationships or to help buy, sell, or invest in real estate. So we have to have leads. Every business does. We focus on listings because listings themselves bring us leverage. With listings, we get to control our time, we get to control our compensation, and listings beget buyers. He or she who controls the listing inventory controls the market, right? Coaching and consulting with agents. It is pretty rare that you'll see an agent's business that they're usually 50-50 buy side, sell side. Maybe they're 60% one or the other. You'll see businesses that are real heavy on the list side, or I'm sorry, on the buyer side, light on the list side. It's actually pretty rare, and there's usually a few unique situations where you'll see a business real heavy on the list side and light on the buyer side. The reason for that is if you go out and get all the listings, you almost accidentally get the buyers, right? You have all the leads that come off it from all the portals and websites and all the things. You've got your open house traffic, sign calls, all the different ways that buyers end up reaching out to you from the listings. So when you focus your time, energy, and effort on getting the listings and mastering those skills, the buyers tend to come to you. So when we look at where we're putting our time, where we're building our systems, we want to look at, are we spending 80% of our time doing these activities? The closer to 80% of our time and effort being focused on these activities, the faster we grow our business, which is how we earn income, obviously, right? So narrowing the focus. This is probably maybe the most important conversation. By the way, I get to make real estate agent jokes because I'm a real estate agent. So if I'm making fun of real estate agents, I'm making fun of myself because I have the same DNA as you do, right? We love shiny things. And we often have the attention span of a goldfish. I don't know why they say goldfish have short attention spans, but I've heard they have really short attention spans, right? We just do. We're an industry full of ADHD, and that's no disrespect for ADHD. Like, it's just, I think that's another word for entrepreneur, or entrepreneur is another word for ADHD, right? But here's the thing. It is so easy in our industry to get distracted by shiny things, especially today. There's a million YouTube experts. There's a million TikTok coaches, right? We go to seminars. Especially at KW, we get a one-pager every week with a blueprint of how to go out and crush it in real estate doing a single thing, right? It's so easy to start this thing and then stop it and start this thing and stop it and start this thing. I would argue the number one key to success is consistency and focus, right? So we got to figure out, how do I grow my business? Not how do they grow their business? How do I grow my business? Now we can R&D, rip off and duplicate. I think there might be it might translate to something else in other worlds, but I think that's a model, right? We can look for a model and we can mimic the model. That's actually the smartest way. First, we got to choose the model that makes the most sense for us, right? So number one, we should have at least 3 primary lead sources, never more than 4, right? Again, this is one of those things I repeat over and over and over again. And we should know what they are, right? So you guys have that worksheet. I would flip it over. I should have put it on there, and I think I neglected to. What are your top 3 lead sources? Right? You should know them right off the top of your head. And again, when I say you should, that's not me attacking you, right? Like any issue, any mistake, any room for improvement that exists in your business, it exists in my world somewhere also. We're just human, right? We're just trying to shine light on where there's gaps, which create opportunities for growth. But you should know those 3 things. What are those 3 things that I primarily focus on in order to generate my business? There should only be 3, minimum of 3, maximum of 4, right? Analogy I always use is a stool. If we have less than 3 legs on a stool, that stool is unstable. It cannot stay up, right? 4 legs makes it more stable. 5 legs makes it weird. So don't have a weird business. 3 or 4. The reason we want at least 3 Example I always use, working by referral, right? There's a coach, very popular coach, on many levels, a great coach, has a great reputation, been in the industry for a long time. But there's a whole coaching model around only working by referral. Only people I already know, past clients, friends, family. When I got into business, I knew people who operated by that model and I admired them. And early in my career, it was my goal to get there. I can't wait until the day that I only work with people I already know, who I like, I've done business with before. And then the market crashed. And you know who took their unfair share of the market crash? The people who had one lead funnel, which was database. Right? Database is always our number one. When I say minimum 3, maximum 4, you actually only get to choose 2 or 3. One of them is database for everybody, because that is where the vast majority of your business will come from, is your database. Then you get to pick your other ones. So a couple things to think about when you're picking your other strategies. Number one, what is most natural for you? Right? So think about your DISC profile, right? What is my natural behavior? And then what lead generation strategies best fit that personality profile, right? So for me, on a DISC, I'm a raging D. Very direct, very impatient, right? Wants to get to the goal as quickly as possible. When I started out, it was database, which I didn't really have one because I had just moved to the place that I lived and I knew 11 people. I know exactly how many, because when you only know 11, you actually know how many people you know, right? Like, it's pretty bad when you know the number of people you know. That's how few people you know. Now, I knew lots of people outside of that area, but in the sellable area, I knew 11. But database was still a priority. It just meant I had to feed it. I had to grow it. It was expired and for sale by owners. That was because it seemed like the fastest path to a result. Those are 2 sets of people that at the time there were a lot of them. And they were people that I already knew had a home, wanted to sell that home. I just had to find the opportunity to get in front of them and convince them that doing it with me was a better situation. And so that seemed like the shortest path because I'm a high D, right? That meant I was making calls in a TCPA compliant way. I was showing up at doors and knocking, right? All, kind of direct, aggressive approaches. Again, as a high D, I'm willing to do that strategy in order to get to the result faster. Now, the flip side, I know agents who built their business and a really healthy business on networking. I will pick up the phone and dial all day. My least favorite thing is shove me in a room full of 100 strangers and go make friends. This is the worst thing in the world for me. I'm like I've had to do it in my career, but I can tell you it's my least favorite thing to do. And because of that, I'm not real good at it. Like, I'll do it, but I'm not real good at it. You know what I have to do in those environments? I need a wingman. Like, I got to be, in order to do it better and at least have a little bit of fun, like I try to find that person who naturally is social and kind of ride their coattails through the room. But it's just unnatural for me. It's not a thing I would ever choose to do as my primary business because I don't like it, which means I would have a hard time doing it over and over again. And it would take me longer to get good at it because it's not natural for me. So think about the things that are more natural to you. And also think about things that overlap. So for me, database, for sale by owners and expireds, I considered one. And then it was business to business. Business to business was an accident. I joined a BNI because somebody told me you're supposed to join a BNI. I got business from that BNI, but I did not like driving an hour for a 6 o'clock meeting to eat donuts and drink coffee and hear about a lovely woman's Afghan business. I totally respect her and her business. It just didn't really relate to me, and it was really early in the morning, and I didn't necessarily want to be there, right? So I was like, okay, these business relationships are valuable. how do I get to relationships without having to be somewhere at 6 a.m. and having conversations with people that I couldn't figure out how I could help or vice versa, right? And then it just turned into as I started selling houses, I had people who needed stuff. Do you know a gutter guy? Do you know an electrician? Do you know a carpet cleaner? Do you know a locksmith? So I just started prospecting to find the people that my clients needed. And then I made it my follow-up with my clients afterwards to be the person for anything you needed for your house, any maintenance, any repairs, any improvements, any contractor you need. Don't Google, call me. That allowed me to add a ton of value to my past clients. It allowed me to feed a lot of business owners who I then built relationships with, became friends with, and they became my referral partners, right? So I kind of got to kill two birds with one stone. Those were my three, right? It doesn't mean I didn't do some other things, right? I sent postcards out around my listings, right? There might be a strategy here and there that I would drop in, but the three things I primarily focused on were those three things. That's where my lead gen activities went to. By the way, at some point in time, the banking crash happened and things shifted. As I started to see that bubbling, I did shift my business strategies, right? I did start going after short sales, foreclosures, and REOs because I saw that that was going to become a large segment of the market. And I saw that the market was going to shrink. So if I didn't want my business to shrink, I needed to go learn how to do that kind of business, right? So think about what your three strategies are. Business gets so much easier when you just decide this is how I build my business and then just get really good at those things. Just get really, really good at those things, right? Anyone who is on the Millionaire Agent podcast, anyone who's got a one pager that is being shared with, all 180,000 of the Keller Williams agents, they're not good at 10 things. They have a thing that they do really, really well. And they built a massive business by becoming the best at that thing, right? So keep your focus narrow. Plan your work so you can work your plan. This ties back in, find the expert. The beauty of the company we're in, the industry we're in, is the success is all around us. So we get to go, here's how I intend to go achieve. Now let me go find the person who's already done it, or the class that we already have, or the piece of technology that we already have. And let me just start with that model because I already know that model has worked. Now I'm going to implement that model. And as I go, I'm going to adjust and tweak, right? So find that expert and copy that model and then plan your time and implement. The redundancy piece. The reality is success is boring, right? It just is. Success is boring because it's doing the same thing over and over again, right? The best free throw shooters have probably thrown the most free throws of anybody on the planet, which I would imagine would be boring to do that over and over and over and over and over and over such a simple shot, right? But it's about the repetitiveness. Because we like shiny things, we tend to want to look for something new and exciting to do every day. That's awesome. Just do the most important things at the beginning of the day every day, get your redundancy out of the way, and then you can have all the freedom, flexibility, and weirdness in your day that you want, right? It's the best of both worlds. You make a lot more money and you have more fun with all that freedom, right? So get used to and embrace just the redundant, the doing the same thing over and over and over again. And I also want you to understand how to look at the metrics of your business. So number one, you've got your numbers, right? Like your GCI, listings taken, listings sold, closed volume, all those things. That is your scoreboard. In business, you track that so that you can understand, am I winning or am I learning? I set a goal based on this metric. Did I hit the goal? Did I not hit the goal? If I hit the goal, I'm winning. If I didn't, I'm learning, right? And then we have our metrics. By the way, this, if you have the opportunity, anything you ever see with Mike Forza, if you really want to learn and understand business at a high level and how the human nature ties into business, anything you see Mike Forza's name on, you should engage in. He's been my coach for 16 years. But this is a couple of bullets from something that he teaches at a high level. But your numbers are your scoreboard. That's where accountability comes from. I intended to do this, I did this. Then we have our metrics. Metrics track effectiveness. You know a metric when you see it because it's always a percent or a percent of, right? So like listings taken, listings sold. Listings sold as a percent of listings taken. That's a metric, right? Profit is a number. Profit as a percent of GCI is a metric, right? Straight up numbers are scoreboards and therefore accountability. What did I intend to do? What did I do? Is there a gap? Am I winning? Am I learning? Then we have metrics. That shows us the effectiveness of what we're doing. Is what we're doing actually working, right? If I go on, I take 2 listings this month. Would you say that I won this month? Just say yes. If you found out I went on 20 listing appointments, would you say I was winning this month? 20 listing appointments, I took 2. Would you say I'm winning? Yeah, no, right? All of a sudden, yeah, no, it sounds like I'm not learning. That's what that sounds like, right? That's the difference. If I just say 2, that's a metric, or I mean, that's just a number. But if all of a sudden you find out, oh, wait, you went on 20 listing appointments and got 2, okay, that is a metric that tells me I'm actually not being effective, right? Those give us insight, right? We just accidentally fell right into it. We went from I took 2 listing appointments to, well, I had a 2 out of 20 conversion ratio. All of a sudden you're like, ooh, okay, there's some opportunity there. That leads us to insight. What do we need to learn? You're apparently really good at getting listing appointments, but Matt, it doesn't sound like you're very good at actually doing them. Now I know what needs to change. I need to go learn how to do a better listing presentation. Because if I get better at that, I can get 18 of them or 15 of them instead of 2 of them, right? And then we take that insight, we learn, we implement, and we rinse and repeat. Like that's how we look at our business metrics to be able to track what we're doing and then use it in a useful way, right? Does that make sense? Okay. And again, commitment and consistency beats everything. So again, I've got a great story that I love to tell that we don't have time for, but I've watched it happen. The people who show up and just do the thing consistently, like that will trump talent, that will trump charisma, that will trump experience over and over again. Questions? While you're thinking of questions, the worksheet. I gave you the worksheet so that you can kind of take some of these conversations and sort of apply them. You don't have to overthink it. Just run through, right? It's a couple of questions and some scale of 1 to 5 for you to be able to go down and just kind of rate yourself. What I would encourage you to do is fill it out. Rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5 in those categories. And then I would say, okay, of the ones that have significant room for improvement, circle the ones that you think matter the most in your business. And now you know what you need to go learn and or work on. The last thing I want to say is I would strongly, strongly, strongly encourage you to put a regular block of time every single week in your calendar to work on your business instead of in. That is where you implement, right? That is where you implement systems. That is where you go to your GPS and you go, okay, I committed to doing this. That's when I work on that project. When you put that block in your calendar every single week to work on instead of in, that leaves your mind and your calendar free the rest of the week to work in the business, right? For me, it was second half of the day on Wednesday, every single week. Stop working with clients at noon. For the rest of the day, I worked on my business. My clients knew it. My family knew it. Everybody knew. I was hunkering down and I was working on projects during that time. The rest of the week, I was working in. I was lead generating. I was going on listing appointments, power consultations, showing, negotiating, all those things we talked about. All right, it is 11:58. What do we have? Questions, comments, or ahas? And you got to give me one of the, I need at least 3 of one of the 3.
I'm Lisa Antrim. I just wanted to say really quick that for me, the aha is when you said that Gary says the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, and sometimes it just kind of clicks. So you have to hear it over and over and over again because when your mindset is ready, everything else makes sense.
Makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely. Allah.
Hi, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Definitely the GCI is not your net
Mm,
income, which
amen.
is, I know that, and I am good about like how, like what my profit and my, maybe I did not invest as I supposed to, but definitely I know my profit and what my expenses, and I'm always in the profit, more profit, definitely. Even my GCI is high and they have more expenses high, but definitely I love to invest more. But this is a good aha for me.
Love that. Thank you for sharing. Give me one more.
I'll do one. Sorry, I'm not sure how to raise the hand.
You did it just like that.
You did it very
Mela,
well.
Still works. Yep.
hi, Mela Case. I'm in Farmington, work most of the state. My aha is to get most of this done in the morning and then work on stuff, do the fun stuff later on. And that's the hardest thing for me to do because I'm not a morning person and I don't have tons of energy in the morning. And some of the lead gen stuff does take a lot of energy for me. So the time blocking, the reserving, say, 9 to 12 for that work stuff, that critical stuff, I think is really important and
Yeah.
trying
I
to do
mean,
that every day.
I will say this, it is incredibly freeing when you implement that. Like it's a habit like anything else, it takes effort to build. But the beauty of it is when you just focus on doing the right things for that period of time, from when you get up to 11:30, 12 o'clock, whatever happens in the day, you already won. Like you just know, like I'm good. If the day goes sideways, I'm good. I did the most important things. I am now free of mind and body to go roll with the world, and I'm good, right? We don't need to we don't need to time block every second of our calendar. So I love that. Thank you for sharing. And remember, your morning is whatever your morning is, right? Like in our business, it feels like it kind of has to happen right around that time frame because later in the day is when we have to be out doing the things. But like if your day starts at 9 instead of 8 working or 10 instead of 9 working, as long as you're taking the beginning of that time frame and fully committing to doing the right things, that's what matters the most. So I love that. And thank you for sharing. All right, folks, that is it for today. I will see you, Cassie. We are on. We are on for next week. So we'll see you all next week.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.